Welcome to another episode of the Sports Lodge. I'm your host, John Lodge, joined as always by my co-host and good buddy, Mike Jones. And Mike, last night we had a couple decent matchups by the Raptors and the Leafs. Both had slow starts, but able to pull it out in the end. And we've got some disheartening news coming out of Columbus. But before we get into all that, we do have breaking news here on the Sports Lodge yet again to start the show. Pittsburgh has decided on a general manager, and while you might not think that breaking news, they have also decided to bring in a president of hockey operations, and it's a name that is well known here in the GTA. Brian Burke leaves Sportsnet and the Hockey Night in Canada crew to move as the president of hockey operations of the Pittsburgh Penguins and join Ron Hextall in trying to restart that dynasty. Quite the news to start the show today.
Yeah, I know exactly. I definitely was not expecting Burke to go there, and but good job and congratulations to Ron Hextall on getting the job. He's definitely sticking it to Philadelphia pretty bad, going over to Pittsburgh and after the way that everything went, but good for him and good for Berkey. He loves to still work in the game. I was pretty sure. I'm surprised though. I thought he was just going to settle down and do media from here on out, but no, he's definitely qualified, so they're lucky to have him.
Yeah, it was shocking to me to hear Burke's name involved in this. Hextall, it's one of those weird ones where you're just like, really? Ron Hextall, the guy who's synonymous with the Philadelphia Flyers, is going to go over to their cross-state rivals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then try and lead that team with Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and the like back into their dynastic path. You like that word, dynastic? That's one I heard this week with the Super Bowl, so I had to slip it in there. Back on the path to possibly win another trophy, another Stanley Cup. The long way to go for the Penguins. They've been faltering for a couple for a little while now. Maybe not a whole season last year. Obviously, they were pretty good, but not championship quality for a little bit now, and looking to make a change over there. Bringing Burke in. That is a real shock to me because, like you said, when he started working at Sportsnet, he made it pretty well known that he was done with the NHL in terms of running a team, in terms of getting that invested and that involved with an organization. And I have to think that Pittsburgh must have knocked his socks off some way. They must have done something to make him really, really want to leave this, because he had a cushy job there and a pretty good salary. He was basically replacing Don Cherry, Berkey's bites, all that sort of stuff. That was basically what he was doing there. And now he kind of leaves Sportsnet in the lurch, I almost find, right? Who are they going to get to replace Brian Burke? And so that's a question that we can ponder on. But first things first, what do you think the new duo in Pittsburgh has on their docket for to take care of first? Is it possibly moving a guy like Evgeny Malkin to get some more youth and some more invigoration into the lineup?
With Berkey there, I definitely can see that being a possibility. You know how he is, and he knows that you gotta have young players in order to develop and get better. I could definitely see that as a possibility. I could also see possibly trying to improve in the goaltending situation.
Yeah, well, they're definitely going to have to really, really take a look at that situation and see if they made the right move. I mean, seeing as how Matt Murray has played in the nation's capital this year, it seems like they did the right thing moving off of him.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
But is Tristan Jarry the answer? I don't know. I don't think so. He looks like another guy who's like a Jack Campbell for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a guy who needs an ace there to be there to start 65% of the time, but he's good enough to be like Jaro Halak, like a really, really good backups, like Anton Khudobin. He's a guy who can be there to support a star player, to support a starter, but he's not the guy to carry the water for your team. So definitely going to have to take a sober look at the goaltending position if you're Burke and Hextall, and possibly get that solved. But it's less likely now with these guys here that you see a Sidney Crosby trade. And that kind of puts a dash to the hopes of people who who wanted to see possibly Nate McKinnon and Sidney Crosby play together. And that would have been RIP the entire league if those two guys got together on a team. But it kind of puts a dash in those hopes, right? I don't see Berkey moving off a good Canadian boy like Sidney Crosby.
No, I definitely don't either. He's he has a lot of respect for him and probably knows that unless Sidney Crosby wants to, he wants to stay in Pittsburgh himself. And honestly, I don't see them necessarily wanting to give up a star like that right now when they're trying to rebuild the team, because if they do get younger, it'll be great to have him still around to mentor, right? So honestly, I don't see him getting moved with these guys at all, which is also gonna piss off Montreal fans who also thought that he was gonna go there too. So, but I'm okay with that for sure.
Sorry, Montreal, you got to wait for your number one center to come from another team or possibly come from the draft. So I mentioned there's a little bit of disheartening news coming out of Columbus, and while Pierre-Luc Dubois, I don't think has yet to play for the Winnipeg Jets, Patrick Laine has apparently already fallen out of favor in Columbus with head coach John Tortorella. And this is a strange one, man. Laine played 7 minutes in the first, 6 minutes in the second, and then 0 minutes in the third. He sat for basically a period and a half straight. And if you believe Tortorella's comments, he said it was on ice and off ice situations. So is this a situation where Patrick Laine said something that pissed off the coach? And furthermore, to expand on that, could you see a possibility where Jarmo Kekalainen moves off of John Tortorella mid-season to try and recoup some of his player morale?
That's a very good point. I could see that happening. John Tortorella is obviously the problem at this point. He's got two players right now in the matter of months with basically the same situation, having to bench them and stuff like that, and just basically can't get along with them. And these are star players that are valuable to the team. Now this isn't just third, fourth line guys that you can easily replace. So at this point, they're going to be looking and being like, well, sorry, like we need these kind of players. It's got to be you. You're going to have to take on this one.
Yeah, it's a situation where, I mean, and this, I'm going to take all bias out of it. I'm going to just like Jarmo Kekalainen and Patrick Laine. Yep, they're both finished. Fine. And you could draw whatever parallel from that you want. But I'm just going to look at this from a straight hockey mind, from a builder's mind. And if player A with high skill had to be moved because it didn't work, and now player B with same high skill, maybe a higher goal scoring ability, also needs to be moved because it's not working with you and you're the one constant in this situation, then you have to take a hard look at the head coach and you have to think, who can I replace this guy with? And it would have to be somebody who is of a younger mindset, somebody who could possibly get on the same wavelength as these young guys. We've talked about the Boone Jenners and the Nick Folignos and the Seth Jones of that team and how they haven't had an issue working with Tortorella, but Nick Foligno's gone after this year. Boone Jenner, probably the same, maybe a year later. And then Seth Jones is the one guy who's going to be around for a few more years to come here. But like it's the changing of the guard, in my opinion. When you look at it, you want to use something that's close to home. Use the Mike Babcock, Sheldon Keefe transition of power here, and how much more the Leafs are getting out of the same players than they were getting out of them when they had an older head coach with a different point of view, a guy who just could not connect with the team on the same level that Keefe is connecting with them on, right? So I think that's the direction Columbus might have to move in here, and where they get that young head coach at, I don't know. Maybe it's someone that they've been developing in their AHL system. Maybe it's not. Maybe they go to the free agent coaching market and try to pick somebody up. But I definitely see a situation here where Kekalainen is going to have to move off of John Tortorella, and we could very soon be seeing Brian Burke's replacement in the studio be John Tortorella.
Well, he's done it before. He's came up here and
he did it for TSN,
yeah, TSN. I could see that. I think he would be entertaining to watch like that, because you know what, I could see him be a replacement of a good replacement for Don Cherry, possibly, because they're basically were the same kind of coaches. Like, honestly,
yeah, just a hard-nosed, singular mentality, sort of like just like a one-track sort of guy, and if you're not going in the same direction I mean, you can get off the road, basically, right? And that's what John Tortorella is like. At least that's what I know John Tortorella is like. I don't know him personally, never met him, and probably never will meet him, but just from what you see in the media, what you see, how his coaching style, how he handles things. And it's like the immovable object meets the unstoppable force, right? And John Tortorella is one of those. He may be the unstoppable force some days, and a lot of days he might be the immovable object, right? He's just one of those things that he's never going to change for anybody. He's just going to do what works for him. And unfortunately, he might be doing that on Sportsnet. Now, I mean, I say unfortunately, he's still going to be making a hell of a nice salary, way more than you or I get, and it'll be a cushy job talking about hockey. But yeah, he may not be the coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets very long, or very much longer, I should say, if it comes down to the fact that he can't get these things working. Eventually, you have to stop looking at the players and look at the coaching staff. Okay, so we do our weekly power rankings here on the Sports Lodge, and during our weekly power rankings, we give you a little bit of flavor, a little bit of how we feel about the teams that we have in that specific spot. And mine, I have to tell you, Mike, mine have changed quite drastically, coming off of a sweep of the Vancouver Canucks. It's one of those things where we have to ask ourselves, who's worse, the Canucks or the Senators?
I still think it's the Senators at this point, but Vancouver's definitely on that, is going in that direction. That was just too easy for the Leafs. Look, the Leafs didn't even have that great of a game last night. They're still able to pull off a win by 2 goals. Like,
they had 7 shots through 2 periods.
Yeah,
the Leafs did.
I know, and they still won,
and they still beat you. And it's the best way I heard it described was one team went into the third period knowing that they were going to win, and the other team went into the third period worrying they were going to lose. Right, and what used to be the Leafs worrying that they were going to lose, they are no longer that team. They know what kind of offensive power they have, and they exploit it as much as they can, although they weren't able to exploit it at all through 2 periods. It was so weird watching that Leafs team through 2 periods, and we'll get into it more in a little bit here, but it just did not look like the Toronto Maple Leafs we've seen through 12 games already, or 13 games already in the year.
Yeah.
So let's start with number 7 then, and you said as much. Ottawa Senators still 7th in the North Division. Still unable to figure this thing out, and sitting on 2 wins, or is it 3 now? I think it might be still sitting on 2 wins. And you can correct me as I go on here. But unable to really get anything done against any of the North Division teams. And not getting the goaltending that they need out of Matt Murray. This is a very young team, but this is a team that is underperforming, even at 7. Even thinking, like I said, I was coming into this year thinking they were going to be a 5-6 team. Definitely not a 7th place team, but they have fallen back, and they've fallen back hard, and some hard questions need to be answered in Ottawa. You knew you were going to be a not a great team, but you shouldn't be this bad, right?
Oh, well, I have no clue what's going on, because you have guys that you brought in, like Braden Coburn, who's been put on waivers, and you've got Derek Stepan, who wants out. They will try and trade him. Like, what's going on there? It doesn't make sense. Luckily, their Stutzla's been playing well the last few games, and but other than that, no, all they've been able to do is muster up 2 wins.
Got a
Like you
couple
said,
scraps last night against the Oilers.
yeah,
Zach Cassian,
saw that one.
And coach, and I think his name is escaping me. Tippett, Coach Tippett, was saying a couple days ago or a day before the game that Cassian needed to step up. He needed to be more effective. He needed to put his stamp on the game, basically. And I have to wonder if Cassian took that as I need to fight. He goes out and fights, but then he gets hurt. So what good is that?
Yeah, it didn't really work out well for him.
No, I mean, Gobranson's a big man. He wanted to fight Brady. I think he wanted to fight Kachuk, and Kachuk wanted nothing to do with him. And then Gobranson comes over. He's like, "I'll go with you." And then that was a mistake because Gobranson's got not only size but as much as Cassian's a tough guy. I mean, come on, like. You're stepping out of your weight class on that one, and you got what you deserved. Ottawa trying to be a little bit grittier. Like I said, they had a couple fights in that one against the Oilers. The Oilers ended up taking it in the third period as well from them. So the Oilers scoring depth. No, their scoring showed up late in the game for them. But we do have to talk about one thing, and I could get into it when I talk about Edmonton, I guess, but they are relying too heavily on Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. That is plain and simple. I'll throw a stat down when we get into the Oilers, but yeah, they got through the Ottawa Senators, but this is a team, like you said, that has 2 wins on the year. You should be wiping through teams like that with no problem whatsoever. So yeah, Ottawa number 7 for me, and long ways to go, man. Long ways to go.
Number 7 for me too, also. So,
okay, number 6. This is my change. Number 6 for me, and we're going to end up agreeing on this one as well because you had them there, I believe, last week as well. Number 6 for me, the Vancouver Canucks. Just a hapless, dismal response. Travis Green said after one game that the Canucks hadn't faced a team as dynamic, as fast as the Toronto Maple Leafs. And at that point of making that comment, they had played every team in the North Division. So if you extrapolate those comments, he's basically saying that Toronto was the fastest, most dynamic, diverse team that the North Division has, and that's being proven by the standings right now. And by the way, they're playing a majority of the time they're on the ice. But the Vancouver Canucks, if Toronto was the most dynamic and fast team, then the Vancouver Canucks are teetering on the edge of being the least dynamic and least entertaining team. And they thought they may have had the answer to losing Markstrom and bringing in a former Stanley Cup winner in Braden Holtby. It just doesn't seem to be working out. Holtby, he has this weird look. He always had this weird look in Washington, almost like he was somewhere else, but you notice it more now in Vancouver, and he seems to be displeased, obviously, with the way his players are playing in front of him. So Holtby may be giving up too many rebounds, but when you kick the puck right to Morgan Riley, of course the puck, of course it's going to go back into the back of the net, right?
Yeah. No, I saw that too. He's doesn't seem to be the same old Braden Holtby like back in Washington. So but again, though, it's a way weaker team. I agree with you that at number 6, I'd choose Vancouver. They're just almost like I said on the Sens level. All their wins, like I said before, are the Sens, and nobody's like producing like enough. Their top players aren't producing, and then what are you gonna do when that's not happening? How do you win games? You have to score, right? And you gotta keep the puck out of the net. 63 goals in 16 games. That's not good.
I think they said they were allowing an average of 4 to 5 goals per game, right? So that's that. I mean, that screams two issues: defensive issues, goaltending issues. And like you just touched on, Braden Hope, he just doesn't seem to be himself. He doesn't seem to be the guy that Vancouver may have thought they were getting when they signed him in free agency. Yeah. And not that he's at an outrageous price, but for that kind of play, for what they're receiving, yeah, he's overpaid.
So you know what? I'm going to take back what I said about the scoring. They lead the division in goals for, but they've let in 63 goals.
I think that's because of the amount of goals they scored against Ottawa. It was like 16-3 was the differential for the games against Ottawa.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know how Vancouver
can... 2 up on the Leafs and 1 up on Edmonton. Montreal, yeah, there's a bunch of us up there though.
That's nuts. Like, I'm really puzzling to me when you tell me that Vancouver scored the most goals in the entire division, yet they are as hapless as they are, and just like thinking, we were just saying how you have to have consistency from your offense. And so if you're leading in scoring and you're still in sixth place in the league or in the division, then there are some serious, like I said, some serious questions. Are they in fifth place? Yeah. Serious questions to be answered for the defensive core and for the goaltending. And I don't see how Jim Benning keeps his job out of the situation after letting the likes of Toffoli, Tanev, and Markstrom go. That to me just screams a failure to do your job to the level that is required to be a general manager in the National Hockey League.
You had those 3 players re-signed and still there, that team would definitely be fighting for one of the top spots in this division easily, hands down. That would have been the core to work with the young players, and it would have been great. But I don't know if any of them decided to move on. Like, they had no interest in coming back, but he should have definitely tried to get them back.
All right, so moving on to my my fifth place team. My fifth place team right now are the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton, as much as I said they beat Ottawa, we've said before, wins against Ottawa come with an asterisk. You should be beating teams like Ottawa and Vancouver if you're a good team in the NHL. But fifth place team to me, because goaltending still too inconsistent in Edmonton, and having to rely solely on Draisaitl and McDavid to provide basically 95% of your offense. And I know that is not an accurate number, so come at me with your statistics if you want, ladies and gentlemen. I will listen to them all. But I'll come at you with this statistic. It was just a couple games ago where McDavid and Draisaitl both played the final 5 minutes and 45 seconds of the game against the Calgary Flames. There was a timeout, a couple icings, and a TV timeout mixed in there. But the fact that your top 2 players didn't leave the ice for 5 minutes and 45 seconds screams to me that you have no depth scoring, and that that is unsustainable.
Do you want them burnt out? Like, what if they're going to plan on surviving off them right now? Like, what do they plan to do when they're both eventually get injured because they're running their bodies down playing them like that?
Yeah, I don't understand. 5 minutes and 45 seconds of like I said, there was a little bit of rest. There's a TV timeout. There's a timeout in there, a couple icings, whatnot. But the point is they were on the ice for the final 5 minutes and 45 seconds, almost final 6 minutes of the game against Calgary. And they lost that game 6-5 against the Flames. So obviously you had them out there because you're trying to force the issue. And most of the times when you try to force an issue like that, like you said, an injury happens, something bad happens. You give up a 2-on-1 and now you're down 2 instead of 1, et cetera, et cetera. You need to get some depth scoring. And I get that RNH is having a pretty decent season, but you need to get some third and fourth line scoring. You need to have some confidence and some ability in the bottom 6 forwards on your team. That's something that the Toronto Maple Leafs have learned over the last couple of years, and lessons that they're putting into practice this year with their depth scoring. Although injuries have happened and have thrown a roadblock up in Toronto's face when it comes to that. But yeah, it's just something you have to go through and you have to learn, right? And I don't know if Edmonton will get that message this year or maybe even next year. But if they don't get it soon, number 97 is going to be getting a plane ticket somewhere else.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's why I have them at number 5 also. They've got the goals. They're second in the division for scoring. But they're also third in the division for goals against. They need to get the goaltending situation figured out there too. Koskinen, he can't handle the workload he's doing right now. That's a big reason too for why he's allowing so much in. He can't handle it. Mike Smith played the other night, last night when they played Ottawa, right? He was in net. But he's got to step it up and play more games and be able to be effective, because they can't just like have him here and there, because Koskinen needs to obviously have sit more nights, and because he just seems like he's completely worn out.
Yeah, Mike Smith was on LTIR to start the season. So he only came back, I believe, 2 games ago, was only able to come off of injury and play. That's why Koskinen had been running ragged, because they didn't have another backup option, kind of like what the Leafs are going through right now. Skinner or something. I don't know the guy's name, an AHL guy, a guy that didn't really deserve to, well, I can't say he didn't deserve to be there, but you shouldn't have to rely on guys like that at the NHL level to be getting wins, and that's why they were running Koskinen ragged, right? And it's kind of the same situation with the Toronto Maple Leafs right now with Frederick Anderson and not wanting to put in Hutchison. It's an interesting situation. Mike Smith, though, he was a late signing in free agency for the Edmonton Oilers, and a guy that maybe he thought that it was his career might be winding down. He's a guy. He's pretty well on there in age for an NHL goaltender, and isn't the best option when you think about free agent goaltenders that Edmonton could have gone out and gotten. Apparently, if you believe the reports, they were in on Markstrom, but they were on the losing end of that one, as he chose Calgary over Edmonton. But it's just one of those things that leave you scratching your head how Edmonton didn't take care of their backup goaltending situation and ended up had to rely on Mike Smith again. Smith can turn back the clock and possibly get you some wins, but he's not a long-term solution to your goaltending issue, and that's something that Edmonton really needs to take a look at. You said that they're number 2 in scoring, and that's all well and good, but if you're number 2 because McDavid and Draisaitl are getting 7 points a night, one game out of every 3, that's no good either, because you need consistency when you're scoring. You need depth when you're scoring, right? So that the wins pile up as opposed to just the point totals for 2 players. Number 5 with the ability to move up, but they got to figure out the goaltending and they got to figure out the depth scoring.
Yeah, no. Hey.
All right, number 4 for me. This one's close. This one is almost a tie for me. Number 4 and 3 is almost a tie for me. I haven't seen enough from the Winnipeg Jets to have them move up, but we also haven't seen Dubois play for the Jets yet, or at least enough for the water level to be raised. Both these teams, the Flames and the Jets, haven't played a ton of games. Both are like the Flames at around 500.
They both played 11 games. They're lowest in the whole division.
So it's a situation that could turn around quick for them. But Winnipeg Jets having a little bit of a struggle, having issues maybe with Mark Scheifele and his production. But it's a situation that like I said, it could turn around fairly quickly with the addition of Pierre-Luc Dubois once he gets once he gels with the team. If he gels with the team, we can't just assume things, because, like I said, look what's going on in Columbus with Laine. It doesn't automatically mean that he's going to get along with the leadership group on this team and he's going to fit in as well as you would hope. But he's a decently skilled center, a guy you can really rely on as your number 2 center if you're the Winnipeg Jets. He's a guy who should raise the water level for Winnipeg. Yeah, stuck at position number 4 here. Winnipeg Jets for me. They need to get the train moving in the right direction, and I think Paul Maurice knows that. I think that they can get some better goaltending from Hellebuck, and if Scheifele can get it going, we get Dubois heated up. This team could very easily move into the top 3, but sitting at number 4 right now for me.
Yeah, no, I actually have the Calgary Flames at number 4. But that's just basically, honestly, it's a flip-flop spot right there. That's like you said, well, we said before, it's a very fluid area of the rankings. No, I just think that Calgary is there just because, they just have to get over that hump of get over that 500 hump, and but they feel like they're 5-5 in the last 10, so that's basically their whole season.
Their last 10. They played 11 games. Poor Calgary, man. When they went to face the Leafs, they had taken a 5-day break, and they were basically on another break. And it's one of those things when you have 7 teams in the league, only 6 teams can play a night, right? So there's going to be teams sitting, and sometimes for an extended period, and it really sucks when you see a team like Calgary have to not be able to really get the train moving, as I said, but Winnipeg, right? Not be able to get any momentum going.
Yeah, well, like that's why I chose Calgary for number 4, but that's why. So yeah. Anyways, to go in like
you obviously have Winnipeg at number 3. Why is Winnipeg up at number 3 for you?
Well, it's just basically based off of they've been able to do better at this point in the season. They played the same amount of games. Their production's about the same. Winnipeg scored 6 more goals and is allowed 1 more, so they're pretty close in base overall when it comes to stats. Like this will probably change if Calgary could easily win a couple games in a row and could turn this all around, right? Like this 2 teams I think are pretty equal at this point.
Yeah, it's like a horse race. Someone could be leading 1 second, and the next second, another horse passes by, and it's just back and forth, right? And it all depends on where they're at the finish line. The Calgary Flames, number 3 for me, and that's based on the fact that they've got a little bit better goaltending, than the Winnipeg Jets have right now. Played fewer or played the same amount of games, I should say, but had some layoffs. I just think that they have.
That's a tough debate too. There, two really solid goaltenders to actually make that decision, right?
I mean, I say Calgary's gotten better goaltending, but not the better goaltender.
Yeah, I was
right.
Gonna say Hellebuck's definitely the better goaltender. Though.
Yeah, Hellebuck. If he gets to Hellebuck levels, then Winnipeg is far and above, because Markstrom hasn't proven that yet, right? But right now, Calgary getting better goaltending than the Jets, and they just seem to me like that young upstart team that's got enough grit and enough grind to really just, if they get things going, to really get it working there in Calgary at the Saddle Dome. And like you said, man, this is one of those things where 1 minute it could be the Jets, and the next minute, or one day I should say, and the next day it could be the Flames, right? I really love to see these 2 teams go at it for 3 games like the Leafs and the Canucks just did, and then you really have a definitive decision on who's a better team out of these 2. You really, unless one wins one wins the other, and then the other one goes to overtime and to a shootout, and then you're kind of still stuck in the same position. I understand that one team would get 1 more point, but still, this is one of those situations where I really want to see Winnipeg versus Calgary face off 3 in a row and see who comes out on top with that, and then maybe put a definitive mark on who's 3 and who's 4. So Calgary Flames number 3 for me. And now we're into the top 2, and in the top 2 teams, Montreal and Toronto in the North Division. This is an interesting one, and Toronto has played outstanding in these last 8 games. They've had quite the scoring run from their top center, Austin Matthews, 8 straight games scoring a goal. Mitch Marner, 8 straight games getting a point. But I don't know if I have a pure number one yet. So I'm going to say tied in the North Division for me are the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And call it a cop-out if you want, but we've got 2 games coming up this week against the Montreal Canadiens. And then, so by Friday, by next week, by next Tuesday, then I will be able to tell you definitively who is the better team, Montreal or Toronto. Right now, they're both playing outstanding. The win percentage is, I think, like 0.28 in the favor of Toronto. I think Toronto's got a 7.78 win percentage, and
Toronto has a 0.808.
Yeah, it's really it's not. Point
Montreal's
is
0.750.
750, and they're 7.78 or 7.8.
The Leafs.
Yeah,
they're 0.808.
0.808. Okay, so they're 0.5 over, but before last night it was 0.778 and 0.750. So it's jumped up a little bit, obviously, since the second or the third victory against the Canucks, adding to the win total for the Leafs. But to me, these two teams, they're so close right now that I cannot make a judgment call on either of them. But one thing is for sure, they're both taking massive advantage of not being in the Atlantic Division this year. Could you imagine being in division still with Tampa, with Florida, with Boston, and with Buffalo for that matter, right? You're just looking at a murderer's row of those top 3. Florida, I believe, still hasn't lost in regulation, and so you'd be looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, who are doing outstanding, but you have all these other guys who are hot on their heels, as opposed to having the cushion that they have in the North Division, and they have a lot of breathing room right now. If they were in the Atlantic Division, both these teams are happy they're not in the Atlantic this year. Is the point I'm trying to make.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, and it's great for them because you can actually see what their teams are more like how dominant they can be. But you'll figure out. You'll figure out in playoffs. So you'll eventually see who is the better when it comes to us in the other divisions. I'm gonna actually have this a ranking. I've just thought of a thing. This is on the wire. This may be a little surprising, but I'm actually gonna put the Toronto Maple Leafs at 2 now.
That is surprising.
Yes. Yeah, like you said, they're basically the same. They're basically the same down the board. 1 game more played by Toronto, but other than that, their stats are basically the same. But there's the one thing that Montreal does have on Toronto right now. Toronto has their guys rolling. Yeah, that's great. But you know what? One thing Montreal has solidified and Toronto doesn't at the moment: goaltending. And they have an amazing tandem of Carey Price and Jake Allen to back him up. That's pretty decent. And obviously the things will be better for us when Jack Campbell comes back. But right now, that's a little worrisome if we ever have to, see Freddie go down or need a day off.
We definitely don't want to see Freddie go down.
We also don't want to have to do to him what Edmonton's doing to Koskinen either. So
yeah, it's definitely something that we're used to seeing in Toronto. We're seeing Fred take a lot of the workload. Jake Allen and Carey Price are outstanding tandem, and to think that Jake Allen was the starting goaltender for the St. Louis Blues before Jordan Bennington.
Till he came around.
He's not that far removed from a starting gig on an NHL team. That's the kind of guy that you really do want as your backup. Like I said, Yaroslav Halak before, right? And while Jack Campbell was never starting that often in Los Angeles, he was spelling John Quick a lot. So it's a situation where Toronto was feeling it. Frederik Andersen playing a lot lot of games, but the one good thing about Freddie playing a lot of games is he seems to be getting comfortable, does he not? I mean, just look at those first two
Yeah.
periods. Look at the game in total against the Vancouver Canucks last night. And I understand, like I said, it's Vancouver. It comes with an asterisk. It's a situation where,
Yes, it officially becomes with an asterisk now after
yeah,
watching those 3 games. I was waiting until the 3 games was before I ever made a decision on that. I said not quite before.
yeah, it's one of those things where you really have to look at it. But Frederik Andersen stole that game for the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. You want to give Vancouver all the props they deserve. They
Oh
held the Toronto
yeah.
Maple Leafs to 7 shots on net through 2 periods, but they were only able to put one past Freddie because he was just playing unreal, out of his mind.
Yep.
If there's one thing about Frederik Andersen playing a lot of games, the good thing to come out of that is, like I said, he normally gets his groove and keeps it going. It's just you don't want to see him get tired and you don't want to see him get hurt. So we want to see Jack Campbell back sooner rather than later. We saw Jackie Boy in the box, or the press box, or the owner's box last night, watching the game. Didn't look like he was in any sort of situation where there was anything that looked like it was super hurt. But then again, we don't know what's going on ligament wise. We don't know what's going on in those joints. So hopefully we get some news about Jack Campbell here soon on the rebound from whatever injury he suffered. But until then, unfortunately, it's the Freddie Andersen show. I don't see the Leafs ever having confidence in giving Hutchison a start, unless it's deemed it's a must. Like you say, you play 5 games in 7 nights and you got a back-to-back in there, then yeah, Hutchison's going to have to get one of those games. But unless you're in that sort of situation, I think it's going to be Freddie Andersen or bust.
Yeah. I really hope that doesn't have to last long.
All right, so there you have it. Our power rankings. I copped out at the end and had 2 first place teams. Mike actually at least ranked them 1 and 2. But talking about just finishing up on this hockey talk and talking about the game last night. The Leafs really, like I said, really didn't show up first 2 periods, but they did show up for 11 seconds in the third period. Austin, well, more than 11 seconds because they more than, they almost, I think they almost tripled their shots through the first 2 periods in the third period. But they more than made up for it, I should say, in 11 seconds of the third period with Austin Matthews and Alex Kerfoot putting it in. Austin Matthews with 8 goals, or 8 games in a row with a goal now, and I mentioned before, Mitch Marner with an 8-game point streak. These 2 guys, they're really taking the next step in becoming the franchise, the faces of the franchise, I should say.
Yeah, I know. They've just taken right over, and they're being consistent. There's no excuses anymore, though. At this age, they're not rookies anymore. They're not sophomores. They've been in the league for now 4 years. This is what they're expected, and they know that. That's why did you see the changes in them going into this season to make sure they were better? Why did Mitch sit there and say, I want to start scoring more, I want to be that player? And look what's happening. He's doing it. They got it in their heads. They know what to do to be successful. They're there putting in the work. They're making the changes they need to be a better player. They're working on their game constantly, never getting cocky, and they're both becoming great team players. Like, it's not all about them. They're not there to pad their stats.
Yeah,
They're there to win.
They're definitely not out there to pad their stats, but it just seems like they're scoring in the flow of the game. Like that Freddie VanVleet 54-point game where the Raptors won. It doesn't seem like it's forced. They're not playing 5 minutes and 45 seconds in a row to try and get a goal. Edmonton. But we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the absence of Wayne Simmons in this game. It was definitely felt a little bit less gritty, a little bit less energy coming out, and the floating winger for the second line. I don't quite know if that worked out too well. They double shifted Matthews and got him out there with Tavares and Nylander sometimes, and that was nice seeing him out there for 8 minutes. But then they filtered in Ilya Mikheyev and I think Barabanov came up for one, and it was just it was a roving winger situation. Mikheyev did some good things, had some good speed, had some good energy, but once again gets the shots on net and unable to finish. We had this conversation with a buddy.
He's creating opportunities still, though. He's still working hard, just like ever. And
what's with him, though? What's missing from Ilya Mikheyev right now? What is he not doing?
I have a feeling he just needs to get one and get that monkey off his back, and it'll start. I don't know. I don't see he's playing any different. It just seems like he's his opportunities aren't great opportunities when he gets them. So that he's doing everything that he should. It's just not happening for him. And I think it's just bad luck at this point.
It's strange. It really is strange because he seems to still be getting his opportunities, like you said, but it's almost like he's a half second late or even sometimes a half second early. And he's just not getting that perfect timing to get the puck into the net. And our buddy, he had said that he's shy. He's taken away. He's not going into the boards. He's not taking hits like he used to. And if that's the case, my explanation for that is plain and it is simple. Maybe he isn't fully back to being comfortable after his severe and, let's call it what it is, life-threatening injury that he suffered last year or 2 years ago now, I guess, December 2019, almost 2 years ago, sorry, a year and a half ago ish. Either way, maybe he's not back to his 100% confidence yet, right? And that's totally okay. I liken it to Giancarlo Stanton from the New York Yankees when he got hit in the face, and I believe it was with Miami that he got hit in the face, the Marlins. He got hit with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball in the jaw, and it was nasty. It was bloody. It was a bad situation. It took him a while to get the confidence to lean back in over that plate and crank homers. And he even had to add a piece to his equipment so that he could have that comfortability to lean in and put his face in danger. And maybe that's where Mikheyev is right now. If he's not going at his 100% capability, maybe it's just because he hasn't hit the back or hasn't escaped his mind yet what happened and how that could very easily happen again. It's a situation that it just takes time to get over, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
That's a very good point. Honestly, that's I would be in that situation if I was the same. I'd be terrified. That was gruesome what happened to him. Like you said, life-threatening. Yeah, he lost a lot of blood. That wrist injury was awful, and it could just be that could be the issue. He might not be willing to do that extra 2 or 3 steps and risk, that collision that's gonna fly a skate up around him and something like that, right? Like it will be a while. He needs, like I say, something needs to happen for him, and he can get that monkey off his back, and he'll feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident. He'll start to learn his limits and eventually work on it himself, hopefully.
Yeah.
But that was a terrible injury, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. It was awful. We're lucky he's able to come back after that one.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that was, I believe that was a stick handling hand, right? That got cut. And I mean, to be able to put the pressure and the force on your wrist to fire a puck at an NHL level speed, after having all those tendons cut. I mean, it's remarkable that he came back, but what's more tragic about the injury is that, and not that it would have stopped the entirety of the injury, but it definitely would have added an extra layer of protection. He normally wore Kevlar sleeves, and he didn't have them on that night for some reason. And of course, the night he didn't have them on, the injury happens, right? And so that's where it happens to be a little bit more tragic. But now it's mandatory now for the Leafs after that mandatory wrist protection, and something that I think should be mandatory anyway. Without getting too deep into it, this gear is made so that it's super breathable now. And if a speed skater can speed skate in that full body unitard, you sure as shit can play hockey with one underneath your gear. I'm sorry, you just can. It might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, and you might have to get used to it. But if it adds that extra layer of protection, that extra layer of skin,
you're moving around like your arms, your legs are moving differently than a speed skater. I wouldn't use that as an example, but like, what else would you? No, but again, people do it. Some players do it. Kids do it all the time. They wear the long johns all the way, full body, right? Now, if you had that with Kevlar, like right down to like the base of your ankle and right down to your wrist right here, like that wouldn't be. That would be fine. Like,
yeah. And my point is like, yeah, it might be a little uncomfortable, right? And it probably won't stop the cut completely, but it adds an extra layer of protection, right? So that you don't get a 3-inch deep cut into your wrist, severing all your tendons, right? Yeah. It adds just an extra layer of protection. All right. Moving on. We did have a Leafs debut, a season debut in last night's game. Rasmus Sandin has been set free from captivity, and lo and behold, Michael, his first game, he gets a point.
Yeah, well, once we get to the point where now who's getting arrested for the kidnapping of this child, he's been on milk boxes for weeks. It's very amazing, great to know that he's alive and well. He was awesome. He fit in. It seemed like he was excited and energetic to be back playing, and it was great to see him pick up a point in his first game, getting an assist. So
on that beauty Austin Matthews goal, right? He got it to Marner. Marner got it over to Austin, and bango, back of the net for the lead. He didn't play a lot.
But again, at the same time, I was hearing rumors that apparently he hasn't been. I don't know if this is just discouragement from not being able to play, or if this is the full overall reason. He's not necessarily put in the same amount of work off the ice that everybody's saying, and that's kind of the reason that he hasn't been given the opportunities. But that's just something I overheard. I'm not gonna sit there and say that's 100%.
If it is true, it's understandable, isn't it? You spent a majority of last year, maybe not a majority, but a good portion of last year being in the NHL.
Understandable. It's like, if you want to play, that's not not a good way to go about it.
No, but I still understand the discouragement is my point.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Like I understand, like you get there and then you put the effort in for the first week or first 2 weeks, you get the camp and whatnot, and you think, okay, well, now they're giving Lethinen a break and they're giving Dermott a break, and Dermott I don't think should have even been on this team. I honestly thought when we were seeing players completely released from their contracts to start the year, RFAs and whatnot, I thought Dermott was going to be part of that pile. The Leafs were just going to be like, so long, sayonara, have a good life, go somewhere else. And if we're wrong, we're wrong, but we think we're right. And so I understand his discouragement. I don't agree with how he handled it and not working hard, but I understand, and I can put myself there and feel discouraged because I was your golden boy last year. I was the guy who beat out Timmy Liljegren, and we're not even talking about Timmy Liljegren anymore. But I was the guy who beat out Liljegren and got that playing time, and I was your golden boy. But now all of a sudden, this guy comes from the KHL, and you won't even mention my name anymore. You don't care about me anymore. Of course, I'm going to be a little bit discouraged. I completely understand that. But, you saw him last night, and he didn't play a lot. He played seventh defenseman minutes, right? He played a couple minutes in the first and maybe a couple minutes in the second. He got a little bit more time in the third, especially coming off that assist off the Matthews goal. But he looked comfortable on that assist, right? He looked like he fit into the system. And this is a situation where we now have to ask ourselves, if he gets 5 games in, if they decide to run with him, he gets 5 games in, bring up that old topic from last show. Do the Leafs have to trade Lethinen so that they don't lose him for nothing because he could just walk away and go back home?
I would try and get Dermott moved as soon as possible. That I think that's the reason that they didn't do what you said earlier about him just being canned. No, he has some trade value. But at this point right now, is if we can see Sandin be able to fill that void and have Lettinen still playing, and put him as the 7th, or Sandin still as the 7th, but get him in the more games. No, give her. If we can keep Sandin off it, get rid of him. He'll do better somewhere else. He will do better in a different system. It's,
I think if you get rid of Rasmus Sandin, you're asking to be.
I'm not saying Sandin. I'm saying Dermott.
Oh, okay. I thought you said. I thought I heard you say get rid of Sandin.
No, I want Sandin to be playing more.
Yeah. Travis Dermott to me is a lot like Tyson Barrie light, right? And Tyson Barrie didn't work in Toronto, and it just doesn't seem to me like Travis Dermott's going to work in Toronto. It was a situation when Toronto was starving, and I mean starving for defensive depth, and everybody put their water in Travis Dermott's bucket, and he's an NHL defenseman. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he's not what the Toronto Maple Leafs need. He doesn't fit into the system properly. And yeah, so I agree. Need to move off of Dermott, whether it's a waiver move or whether it's a trade, I don't know, but it's something that definitely needs to happen. You have too many good young defensemen that you want to try and bring up into the system in order to be keeping a guy who's just not working out.
Yeah.
A couple more things on the Leafs before we move on to the NBA. I want to give some props to Boyd, Travis Boyd. He's played well. Had a key block in the first period that kept it a 1-0 game for the Leafs, because Freddie wasn't going to get over and it was going to be an empty net, but Boyd got his skate in the way. So key block for Boyd, and we got to give love to our boy Kerfoot. Nice goal to get the second goal in 11 seconds, but more so, he seems to have gotten a handle on not taking penalties. And he went on Saturday night, he went the entire game without a penalty. So got to give props to our boy Kerfoot for that.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That's something that has been noticeable in this game too. Imagine if we had had those those problems with penalties in this game with the shot differential and everything. So it's been good to see him be able to get himself under control.
Yes, for sure. Anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here? Out of the hockey talk?
I got a quick one. What are your thoughts, and when do you think Scott Sabourin will, if he ever gets into the lineup?
So that's a tough one because, and for those who don't know, the Leafs signed Scott Sabourin to an NHL contract this past week. But this is a guy who was in camp for the Leafs, and he was, I believe, on the AHL team. And so his contract was extended to an NHL contract. It almost to me seems an answer to the Wayne Simmons, or a knee-jerk response, I guess, to losing Wayne Simmons' grittiness and toughness. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I think the way the Leafs look. Well, no, I'm not saying he's a bad player.
No, he might be that kind of like replacement when you want for the physicalness, but he's not going to bring the offense that Simmons does. And do you want to take up that spot, and where instead you can give Robertson time in that spot when he comes back, or that's a spot you could put Thornton in until when he first comes back, if he's before Simmons. So like, do you want to take that away from the guys that aren't playing right now and the guys on the like coming off IR?
Yeah, no, that's where I was getting to is like, I mean, I like his grittiness and I like his determination. But I don't think he's got the skill level needed to play on this Toronto Maple Leafs team, especially when we're talking about what we're using those bottom two lines for is depth scoring. Wayne Simmons was playing on the second line. No way in hell Sabourin sees second line minutes. Nick Patan, Travis Boyd, and then Nick Robertson and Joe Thornton. These are all names that are in the hat here, and names that I find I definitely list above Scott Sabourin. So
Well, definitely Joe Thornton's getting one of the spots when he comes back. So they're not putting him on the taxi squad.
No, for sure they won't.
But
They would move Spezza back to the taxi squad before they put Thornton there. They really would.
Yeah.
As good as Spezza's been playing, and as much as it may not be deserved, just based solely on merit alone, they would move Spezza back to the taxi squad to make room for Joe Thornton. But yeah, Scott Sabourin to me, an interesting signing, but a situation for me where I don't even think he gets into the lineup at all. I really don't. There would have to be another injury, and it had to be a situation where it's called for, and you don't really have a team in the North Division unless you're planning on throwing Scott Sabourin out there to fight Milan Lucic, where you have to have that sort of a tough guy in there who really does take a drain on your skill.
A sacrifice.
That's it, a sacrifice. That's a nice way to put it.
All right, yeah. You're playing
you mentioned
for like a minute. Just go and fight him. Get off the ice.
You mentioned Joe Thornton. You mentioned Nick Robinson. A good duo to talk about to get out of the Leaf talk. They were both back on the ice. They're both looking to ramp things back up. It's nice to see them there, but we don't have an exact timeline as to when they'll return. It's interesting, though, because there are some guys who have really showed that they deserve some minutes, but they're not going to get those minutes when these guys come back. Do you possibly see the Maple Leafs assigning Robinson to the AHL?
No.
Well, that was a concise answer.
No. They'll work him in.
Just not a chance that he's going to play in the. I mean, and to me, it's not a skill thing. It's not he doesn't belong in the NHL. It's he's going to get 17 minutes a night in the AHL
as soon as possible, and they're going to want him to be ready to play in the NHL. They're going to want him to get in as many games as possible this year. They sent him the AHL. He's not coming back up.
Well, that's I mean, it's understandable. That's the method that they've gone on so far. They've been trying to get him as NHL ready as possible. It's interesting. It's a developing situation. It's one of those things that that you won't know until we're there. But I personally, I would send him down. I would send him down just basically because I want him to get those 17 minutes a night playing. I understand it's against the AHL competition, but you get some size, get in the weight room, get some reps and some experience, and then be able to be called up at a moment's notice to come and play for the team that you've played for before, and you have some experience on. But I mean, just the time on the ice.
Is it going to be so free? I don't think it's going to be so free willy-nilly going up and down from the AHL to the NHL this year.
I don't know what the protocols are for it.
It'd be easy to just send down, but like obviously that's quarantine and everything. You're going to miss tons of time. What's the point? Season's not long. The AHL season's even shorter. It's like 32 games.
Yeah, which is just It's strange. I mean, to play such few games, I think you've got to play at least 52 games to be or 53 games to be a legit season. In my personal opinion, you hear leagues like the WHL playing a 24 or 25 game season, and it at that point, I wonder why. But my only reasoning for having Robinson in the AHL would be just for ice time and ice time alone. I just don't want to see him sit on the bench and get 5 minutes of 4 or 3 minutes a period, 2 minutes a period, and then ends up with 8 or 12 minutes on the ice total.
On the taxi squad, that's going to be any better than him.
It's not about being better than him. It's about making him the best he can be.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, yeah, Travis Boyd isn't better than Nick Robinson. Right. But Nick Robinson's upside for playing 17 minutes a night, 17 plus minutes a night is way better than Travis Boyd's would be. And he wouldn't regress playing the few minutes that he's playing, right? He's in a good role right now as the fourth line winger for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So yeah, it's just one of those things where, it really depends on how you view the growth rate and how much it might stunt Robinson being only playing a few minutes. If it doesn't stunt him at all, if Kyle Dubas doesn't think that's going to happen, if he thinks the best way for him to develop is to develop against NHL talent, then he's not going anywhere. But that's why Kyle Dubas is running an NHL team, and I'm sitting in my basement recording a podcast. I don't have the experience nor the knowledge to be an NHL general manager. All right, we've run a little bit long with the NHL talk. We got to get out of it. We're going to jump into some NBA, and we're going to be quick with this. Everyone knows that this is basically a hockey-centric podcast. Mike is a huge hockey nut, and I try to absorb as much sports as I possibly can. The Raptors took on the Grizzlies last night. They did not show up really for the first 3 quarters of the game. It was a sleepy performance. It was a situation where the Raptors maybe were saying, woe is me, because they lost their starting point guard in Kyle Lowry after 8 minutes of court time. He had back spasms, had to leave the game. But lo and behold, in baseball fashion, Nick Nurse goes all Tommy Lasorda, gets himself kicked out of the game, and the Raptors respond, rebound the ball, and outscore the Grizzlies, I believe by 20, to take the game from them basically in the fourth quarter. It was Raptors championship basketball style play. It was a defensive style of game, and it was refreshing to see. If they can keep up this style of play, I can easily see them climbing back to the 500 very quickly. 2 games under 500 at 11-13 right now. But more notably, being without Kyle Lowry, back spasms can linger. So this could be a longer-term situation where he might be out a couple weeks. But being without Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet has showed once again that the Raptors' faith was not misplaced in him when they gave him that contract that he signed this past offseason to be the future of the point guard position for the Toronto Raptors. And it further asserts to me that we could probably see Kyle Lowry be traded by the trade deadline by the Toronto Raptors to another team so that they could fully move on to the future with Fred VanVleet as the number 1 point guard. He just continues to prove that he can run the offense and he can get the boys fired up and just be that leader that the Raptors need. Pascal Siakam took another step last night, got over the hump with this 3-point shot. It's been horrible for the season, really, but it looked better last night. And he continued to progress with it. He did miss some, but I believe he made 4 3-pointers last night. So, the Raptors looking good, looking like they're headed in the right direction. But what I guess my question for you, Mike, is would it shock you to see Kyle Lowry wearing another jersey this year?
It'd be upsetting to see, but yeah, no, it wouldn't be too much of a shock. What you said made a lot of sense. Fred VanVleet seems like he's ready to take that over. It seems like he was signed in that, so it was obviously that the idea of management that he's next in line, and I think he's ready to take it over right now. When he has the opportunity to be big, they do great, and obviously they're climbing back after that terrible start. They're in a playoff spot at this point. And just barely, but they're back in a playoff spot from basically opening the season as probably the worst team in the league. And so it's really good to see them get their act together and start getting some wins and get themselves back into the chase for playoff time, because it's a short season, right?
Yeah, it's also a shortened season, and so being starting off 2-8, that was really disheartening, right? As a Raptors fan, I was like, oh man, this really sucks, and I was already thinking about, well, if the Leafs and the Jays are good and the Raptors are bad, then I'll be okay. I'll be okay. The Raptors are allowed to be bad and rebuild if they need to be, but it's nice to see that they
won a championship, so they don't need to have any excuses. They're allowed to have a down year.
Well, that's it, right? But it's nice to see that it's not as down as we once thought, right? And getting to see the youth like Watanabe and Stanley Johnson play key roles on this team in the absence of OG Anunoby it just goes to show that the Toronto Raptors know how to draft, know how to develop, and know how to sign talent that other people just aren't looking at. And that's the way the San Antonio Spurs for years, for decades even, were able to be one of the top teams in the Western Conference and in the NBA and challenging for titles year after year, was being able to draft, develop, and sign players that other people just weren't looking at. So it's a good trend to see, and we're hoping. It's nice that the Raptors are back in the playoffs right now, hoping to move up the ranks and become one of the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference in this shortened season. Going to be a tough slog against against the Milwaukee's and the Boston's, but yeah.
Fifth place is like a game difference basically. So
yeah, it's a log jam.
There's a bunch of teams right there, right? So yeah,
it's a log jam for sure in the Eastern Conference. But it was nice seeing them get the win this past week against Brooklyn too, right? That's a team where you could definitely see a first round matchup if the Raptors finish lower in the standings against Brooklyn, and it would be an interesting matchup to play in the first series against the Brooklyn Nets. Speaking about that Brooklyn game, before we get out of basketball, we had, and as I wipe my face, we had an interesting series of events in that Brooklyn game that started with Kevin Durant on the floor for practice, shoot around, then taken off the floor, and we were told that he was unavailable due to health and safety. Then the Raptors go on a deadly run and take a near 20-point lead on the Nets. And out of nowhere, Kevin Durant is cleared to play, comes in, changes the path of the game, gets Brooklyn to the lead, and then 3 or 4 minutes into the third quarter, we hear again that Kevin Durant has been pulled due to health and safety reasons. And I'm sitting here in my living room with my hands up like this. You're like, what the hell? Why was he even allowed to play? Who made that decision? And who pressured the person to allow Kevin Durant in the game? Because he sure as hell wasn't ever actually cleared. His test never came back, or the person's test never came back to allow him in that game. He should have never been allowed to play. He was out there around the Raptors. He was out there around his teammates, and he's provided a negative test since, and he's allowed to return on Friday to the team, or he was allowed to return on Friday to the team. But it just goes to show the lack of control the NBA actually has over these players and whether they're held out or put into games. And then Kevin Durant goes on a Twitter tirade saying that he needs to be freed and that the NBA is unjustly holding him out of games. I mean, shows a complete lack of respect for the situation, the scenario you're in. It almost brings me right back to Rudy Gobert touching all the microphones and everything after he shut the whole league down in March with his COVID positive test. And like I said, it just shows a complete lack of disrespect. So I need the NBA to investigate this issue and tell me exactly who cleared him to play and why he was cleared to play.
Honestly, gotta watch myself because we don't want one of his burner accounts to come and give us a hassle in the comments here. But I personally think that Kevin Durant is a pretty damn selfish guy. Like he doesn't care about anybody else's health or anything as long as he can get in the game, get points, and they win. Well, yeah, that's cool to have the opportunity to win and everything, but you do have to understand you're playing against another team that's going through their season. You totally affect them if you're playing. So again, also there's somebody who let it happen, and they should be held accountable for that if he did ended up being positive. But obviously he's going to be back and nothing serious would have happened, or else this would be even bigger news. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I have to throw in there that there is 100% chance that Kevin Durant was pressuring the dude holding him out. Like he was sitting back there, he's like, "Come on, man, let me go, come on." So he was getting pressure from one side, And then I guarantee that Steve Nash sent someone from the coaching staff back to see what the hell was going on with Durant. So he was getting pressure from another side, and eventually, pressure can really make you make some bad decisions. So I'm not calling for anyone to be fired or anything like that. I just want some answers, and I'm happy that that nothing bigger has come out of the situation. We don't need no Kevin Durant burner accounts on here making comments, but I don't know if Kevin Durant has time for me and you. So we're not national media, but KD, if you want to say something, hit me up. All right, moving on to the NFL. We had the Super Bowl take place on Sunday.
Superb owl.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't understand that for the longest time, and then I almost sent Super Owl to you. So it must be like a typo situation, but yeah, the Superb Owl happened on Sunday. It was Brady versus Mahomes. It was Bucks versus Chiefs. And if you talk to people before the game, this was going to be a showdown of epic proportions. And Patrick Mahomes was going to move on his way down the road to being the next GOAT of the sport. And Kansas City was going to have a test, but they were going to come out with their second straight Super Bowl. And what Kansas City ended up coming out with was a big steaming pile of you-know-what, because they were only able to put up 9 points in the entire game, while Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just completely dominated on both sides of the ball. Tom was able to get equal yardage through the air as on the ground with Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. And the defense was chewing up the offensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs. JPP, Shaq Barrett, they were getting theirs. They were feasting all game. Patrick Mahomes was scrambling back out of the pocket, unable to really get comfortable at all at any point. So, yeah, definitely didn't go as a lot of the prognosticators were predicting. But there's a smile on my face, man. Tom Brady got his 7th ring, which is more rings than any franchise in the entire NFL history has gotten. So it's damn sure the most rings any single quarterback has gotten. And one of the first things he said on the microphone after winning the MVP, I might add, which I may or may not agree with, was, "I'm coming back." You knew that already, though. So he ain't done either.
Well, he is already signed for next year, so and if they can keep most of the guys from this year, I could see that happening. Yeah, no, he's definitely the best. There's no debate about it at all. Hands down, he's gonna be like Gretzky. It's gonna be a long time before anybody can compare.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the question now has to be asked: who's the goatiest goat of all goats? Is it Brady or is it Michael Jordan? And that's a question that could be debated for hours and hours and hours if you had the stats, if you had the time. But based on the era of competition and the longevity of the career, the constant success of always being there, and the ability to do it with 2 different teams at a championship level, I got to go with my boy Brady. He surpassed Michael Jordan on Sunday as the greatest athlete of all time.
I'm gonna have to disagree on this one. I think Jordan just barely still gets it because the fact that in the middle of the 2 3-peats, he took a year off to play baseball and came back and was still able to, it was like he never left. You know what it's like to take a year off, especially in the middle of your career?
Well, I don't know what
That's
it's
not
like to
an
take
easy.
I mean, my whole life is taking time off. Okay, so let's just be honest. I definitely don't know what it's like, but I understand what you're getting at there, especially
Yeah.
after watching the Jordan documentary, and you go through the time when he had to change his body to play baseball. He had to change his muscle mass and which muscles were stronger. And a basketball body is different than a baseball body, and I'm not just talking about a catcher's pudgy tummy. But I'm just in general, the muscles you need to activate to be a good baseball player and the muscles you need to activate to be a great basketball player are completely different. But I mean, I call it bias, and I will be totally fine with it. I just think because Tom Brady has done it for 20 years, he has been in 10 championship games, and 70% of those games he has walked away with the ring. And the years that he wasn't in those championship games, well, you probably went through Tom Brady to get to the championship game. So it's just completely unparalleled to me. And I'm going to read some stats to you. I'm going to read some stats to you.
Wait. Before that, I will give Brady this. He did have the season that he basically missed because of injury.
Well, yeah, he blew his knee out and he didn't.
So not only was he out for a year, he was having to deal and recover from an injury. So you know what? I will give him that. I will say this on my opinion with Brady. He's just about there. He just makes it to the Super Bowl. Doesn't have to win next year, or does it at least one more time. He will shoot up.
All right, I'm going to read you some stats, okay? And you're not going to believe this, okay? So the picture here says 2 Hall of Fame careers, question mark. Tom Brady through 2001 to 2011, 3 Super Bowl wins, 5 appearances, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, 2 league MVPs, 9 division titles, 16 playoff wins, 2 All-Pro teams, 7 Pro Bowls, 39,973 yards, 300 passing touchdowns, and a 140-42 record. That's from 01 to 2011. Now, from 2012 to 2021, he has 4 Super Bowl rings, 5 appearances, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 1 league MVP, 8 division titles, 18 playoff wins, 1 All-Pro team, 7 Pro Bowl teams, another 39,225 yards, 281 passing touchdowns, and a record of 124-39.
He's like fine wine. Gets better with age.
It's insane when you break that down. This man had 2 Hall of Fame careers through one career, because football, the longevity of a football player is I believe at one point was 4 to 6 years.
It's 3 to 4 years is the average career.
And so that's 20 years, 2 Hall of Fame careers by one man. I just think the stats speak for themselves. Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player to ever step on a court.
But he wasn't that in the 90s. He wasn't that all career long. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, he throughout his entire career, Tom Brady has just been, he's been getting better. Like you said, like a fine wine. He just ages and gets better, or gets better with age. And when he blew his knee, it's funny. There was a moment, sorry, as I digress, there was a moment at the Super Bowl where they showed the phases of Tom Brady, and he was kind of pudgy to start, and then he his face thinned out and everything as he went and got older. When he blew his knee out, that's when the TB12 thing started. That's when the no eating dairy and no eating sugar, no fruits, not eating pork or anything like that. Not the entire new Tom Brady. That started after he blew his knee out, and he realized that I can't rely solely on my skill. I need to make sure that I'm around for the long haul. And so that added on top of it, that he decided to change his entire life to better his career and to extend his career. Tom Brady, the goatiest of all goats to me. But we go from talking about one goat
to the next goat.
To the next goat, yes. And you know where I'm going with this. This guy is the goat of betting simply based on one bet. And we're talking, of course, about the Super Bowl streaker who was wearing a bra, who hauled his pants down. He ran on the field. It has been found out by this show, by the co-host Michael Jones of this show, that said streaker had placed a $50,000 bet at +1 or +740 odds that there would be a streaker at the Super Bowl, and then made sure it happened by doing it himself and netting $374,000.
To start off, I say this guy deserves a round of applause. This guy made sure, like he made sure it happened. He had a friend there with him who ran onto the field first to distract the security so that when he ran on, he could make sure he got on the field, made sure he got seen, and made sure he won the bet. This guy's an absolute legend. $375K and then $1K to get out of jail. That's quite the payday. I say it would be worth it. Like, honestly.
Yeah. And I'm just, like I said, before we started recording, I'm left with the question, does the organization that he made that bet with, does the company that he made that bet with have any legal recourse to say, hey, now you fixed this bet to make sure that it came true? I'm sure that they're going to try. I don't have any legal background or knowledge to say whether they're going to succeed or not, but I do have to give my props to the dude who made sure it was going to happen. And even if you were to subtract the total that he paid for the tickets to be at the Super Bowl on top of the bail to get out of jail, or the fine or whatever to get out of jail, you're still laughing to the bank with a ridiculous payday at $375,000. So yeah, definitely win the GOAT title, at least for a little while until I find something else that happens. But yeah, you streaker from the Super Bowl, good on you. You're making us bettors all proud. All right, that's all we've got for this episode of the Sports Lodge. I want to thank everybody for listening, everybody for tuning in, watching the YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, comment. Let us know what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear. If you Americans are listening and you want to hear some American hockey content, you want to hear us talk about something other than the North Division, we need to know. We're here in Toronto, and if you're listening to us from the States, let us know. We'll get some more content in from the teams in the United States. That is, if any of them can get back to playing the game, with the COVID issues. It's a whole story that we've got into last time, and we won't dig into on this episode, but if it continues, we'll have to talk about it on Friday. But like I said, that's all we got for this week. I want to thank everyone for listening. I'm John Lodge. That's Mike Jones. We're out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.